So just very impressive. And I'm like, okay, I have another 30 years here that I can do some good on the planet. What am I going to do? And it won't be what everybody else tells me to do.
I love the outlook, honestly.
Yeah. You have to really, you could think, oh my gosh, 2/3 of my life is over
Yeah,
ish,
no, but
but you can't.
you can't, and you didn't let what we call introjects, these shoulds,
Yes.
stop you. I
Yes.
shouldn't do this.
What
I'm
does she think
turning.
she's doing?
What
I
does
had
she think?
somebody
Yes,
say to
exactly.
me,
That's exactly it.
what are you doing with your little book? And I was like, oh,
Oh my
okay.
God, that term "little," right?
Yeah.
It's really a loaded word, right? How is your little real estate practice going? Not only
I
when they
know. Did you see me in the magazine recently? You just got to
yeah,
put your head down and keep going,
right.
people. To really put it into both areas, I had the feelings, the whispers that I was out of alignment, but it was a cognitive recognition with theories about personality and lifestyle based on like Maslow's hierarchy, what needs weren't being met. So me being the person I am and studying, like, how can I fix this? It was all backed by science eventually that I was living out of alignment and that was causing discomfort.
And I mean, that's fascinating. How were you able to connect all of this together with Maslow's hierarchy, and how did that come about?
Yeah, well, the first thing I connected was like my personal foundation with the Wheel of Life. I was flying home from Spain from a creative writing trip. And as I was landing in Paris, France, I had drawn this wheel on my notebook, and it was a writing retreat with people of my same personality. So I was an accountant before that, not my thing. So I was changing everything. And so as I landed in Paris, this lady next to me looked over. She said, what is that? And I said, it's the Wheel of Life. And I'm basing it on your home and how the foundation are the 4 M's: myself, mastery, mission, and mates. And so if your foundation is off, which mine was, I wasn't acting as my true self, it's going to affect the rest of the house, which is all your lifestyle areas, those 8 areas of the Wheel of Life. And she goes, that's fascinating. Can I have your card? No, that was 2018. So if you're listening out there, I finally got the book done.
Have you ever faced a moment that changed everything? A loss, a new path, or an awakening that forced you to rewrite your life? Pivot Point is a podcast that explores those stories. I'm Nick Michael. We'll dive into how pain can spark growth and how crisis leads to clarity. Subscribe to Pivot Point today.
Welcome to Pivot Point Strategy for Change. I'm Nick Michael. There's a particular kind of discomfort that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive as a breakdown or a crisis. It doesn't interrupt your day in an obvious way. What it does, quietly, persistently, is sit just beneath the surface of a life that, by every visible measure, is working. The career is real. The home is beautiful. The accomplishments are earned, and still, something doesn't fit. Not loudly, not urgently, just not quite right. For most people, that feeling gets rationalized, managed, pushed down long before and long enough to become background noise. Because telling the truth about a life you worked hard to build, that takes something most people aren't quite ready to give. My guest today is Kim Costa. Kim knows exactly what that costs and what it makes possible. Kim is an author, speaker, podcast host, creator of the Wheelhouse Method, and a top-performing realtor serving the Atlanta area. But none of that is where her story starts. Her story starts with a house. After years in residential design and construction, Kim built what she believed was her dream home, Clarity Farm. It was, by any standard, beautiful. And the moment she was living inside it, she knew something was wrong. Not with the home, with the life it was reflecting back to her. Around that same time, she was offered an opportunity connected to the Oprah Winfrey Show. The kind of moment most people wait their whole careers for. And she turned it down because she couldn't stand in front of an audience and honestly claim that life she was living was one she'd actually chosen. That decision didn't end anything, it began everything. What followed was the work Kim now brings to others through the Wheelhouse Method, a framework built on foundational premise that real alignment isn't something you find by accident. It's something you tell yourself the truth long enough to reach. In this conversation, we talk about the cost of performing a life that no longer fits. We talk about reinvention in your 50s, not as a second act, but as a first honest one. And we talk about what it means to let a beautiful thing go because you finally trust what's on the other side of that honestly. Kim, welcome to Pivot Point Strategy for Change. Very excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here, Nick. Thank you for having me.
I've been following your work. We've had a couple of conversations. I really wanted to begin with, how did the idea for Live in Your Wheelhouse first emerge for you personally? Was there a specific moment in your own life where you realized something needed to change? And keeping in line with how I like to view or begin things here on Pivot Point, was it an emotional or cognitive awareness before the actual change?
You know, I would say it was a cognitive, at least the final point, the straw that broke the camel's back was cognitive, because I took a personality test and was also working with a coach that had me filling out the wheel of life, which are 8 areas of your life, and you rate them from 1 to 10 as to how they're going. And so I was doing this on a quarterly or monthly basis, making huge changes in my life, realizing I had a flat tire on that wheel of life, and that my life did not fit my personality, and it hadn't for quite some time. So to really put it into both areas, I had the feelings, the whispers that I was out of alignment, but it was a cognitive recognition with theories about personality and lifestyle based on like Maslow's hierarchy, what needs weren't being met. So me being the person I am and studying, like, how can I fix this? It was all backed by science eventually that I was living out of alignment and that was causing discomfort.
And I mean, that's fascinating. How were you able to connect all of this together with Maslow's hierarchy, and how did that come about?
Yeah, well, the first thing I connected was like my personal foundation with the Wheel of Life. I was flying home from Spain from a creative writing trip. And as I was landing in Paris, France, I had drawn this wheel on my notebook, and it was a writing retreat with people of my same personality. So I was an accountant before that, not my thing. So I was changing everything. And so as I landed in Paris, this lady next to me looked over. She said, what is that? And I said, it's the wheel of life. And I'm basing it on your home and how the foundation are the 4 M's: myself, mastery, mission, and mates. And so if your foundation is off, which mine was, I wasn't acting as my true self, it's going to affect the rest of the house, which is all your lifestyle areas, those 8 areas of the wheel of life. And she goes, that's fascinating. Can I have your card? No, that was 2018. So if you're listening out there, I finally got the book done.
So let me flash up the Wheelhouse Method
Yes.
for viewers, really, if you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Yes. Okay. So the wheelhouse assessment is in the shape of a house. And so the bottom are the 4 M's. And that's the foundation that is, if there's a crack in the basement, like I said, there's going to be cracks. And I see it physically in a home. There are cracks in the middle of the home. And so myself is, who are you? What's your personality? What do you enjoy doing? And how do you like to live? And then mastery is, what of your gifts that you have been given do you actually have you focused on? Are you focusing on the right things? I was focusing on accounting. Really, I'm a people person. And then it's to mission. What are you doing with those gifts? And then mates are, who do you surround yourself? Your partner, your best friends, even your family. Who do you let in your home? Do they support you or do they sabotage you? And then from there, it goes up into the middle living areas of the house framework, where you have the 8 areas of the wheel of life. They're finance, health, environment, career, romance, fun and leisure, spirituality, and family and friends. And so those are the 8 areas that you need to be living in alignment with. If you're scoring a 2 in career and a 1 in finance based on your home, like you can't afford the home, or you just got a promotion and you're making a lot more money, you can afford a bigger house, and your new job is in Spokane and you live in New York.
Oh, wow.
That's not going to work. So you have a flat tire.
I love that term flat tire. I think it's a great what for you, what specifically didn't feel aligned, even though everything looks successful from the outside?
Yeah. Well, going back to Clarity Farm, that beautiful house I built with my former spouse in Milton, Georgia, which is a big horse farm country, and that's what everybody did. I'm a golfer. I like my feet on the ground. I don't like to scuba dive. Nothing my brother does. Good for him. They love it. Beautiful photos coming back from that. That's not for me. I like my feet on the ground. So I was horseback riding. I'm an extrovert and I was living remotely out in the country. I was performing the controller task in our residential construction business. I am a right-brained person. I do not normally operate mostly out of my left side of my brain. So I'm a logical person, but I'm also a very creative person. That felt like it was missing in my life.
You
So,
sound more balanced, though. I don't mean to
well, I
say that,
am. Yeah,
because the accounting is more left, and then the
it is.
creativity, everything else you're doing is just speaks in
Totally.
loud and clear of right brain.
But doing accounting for 27 years, I
Yeah.
developed that side of my brain
Yes. Yeah.
and I had to use it. And I wondered why I had a headache because I'm not normally made that way. So that's what felt out of alignment, and so much so I was doing the wrong hobbies and I fell off the horse and broke my back. And so while I was home, I started writing again. It forced me to pause. It forced me to reckon with myself and the lifestyle I was living. That is the pivot point right there. Is I was lucky to be walking by all accounts, and what I felt was a second lease on life and having a full mobility for the rest of my life. And my doctor said, "I don't know why you're going to walk again. You must have an angel on your shoulder." And so that put out a light bulb. That was my pivot point. What am I going to do with this blessing? And so the wheels started turning, and like eight moves, a divorce, a career change, an empty nest later, I finally made the changes.
I want to compliment your persistence and your grit
Yeah.
for not giving up and for searching and allowing, because I could imagine that creative part of you was really searching
Yes.
and then taking it to the next level. What were you actually telling yourself to maintain that narrative when it was happening?
That keep going, one step in front of the other. Know what your end goal is going to be. And I didn't want to break up my family. I didn't want to upset, we needed to run the business. So I just kept going, but I went and got an interior design certificate, which is creative. I went and got most of a master's of human resource development, which is people oriented. So along with doing what I was doing, I scratched that itch and educated myself in the area that I knew I wanted to get to. It just, took a little while to get there.
That is amazing. I when I work with people that have made career changes, I just know that those are the aspects of their life when they see or hear someone talk about taking the initiative and making a complete turn. Uh, your story is definitely fits right into that. So, what belief about success had to break for you to move forward?
That I don't have to continue doing what I've done. And that even
Yes.
though I co-ran a successful business and that was lucrative, that did not. So I started to go get my master's in accounting
Mm,
because that's what I've been doing and that's how I need to make a living and all the things. Like I've done this for 27 years. How can I pivot now? But I started to get that master's, had a massive headache, and I just said, I can't do this anymore. And so then I said, I'm going to become a realtor. And that the pivot point there was that farm, Clarity Farm, that I built from scratch with my former spouse. Somebody bought it for quite a sum of money and tore it down and I was like, oh my gosh, my like people loved that home. It was beautiful. I had such memories there. And so when they tore it down, I was like, I'm going to become a realtor. I'm going to help people create homes again because now my masterpiece is gone. And it's a sign, like, I need to start listening and paying attention to these whispers and signs because I just believe that there's a higher power that shows you the way.
Of course. Yeah.
And I was doing my will. I was not doing the will of the universe or God or however you want to perceive that. So I felt like I was forcing my will and it was not working out well.
No, I hear you. Is there something about professionals who begin with accounting and change careers? I mean that sincerely. I over the years, and even the accountants I've known, and I've seen people. And when I was graduating many years ago, that was a very, it paid very well. It was an image everyone had. So
Right. Professional title, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Lawyers, doctors,
yeah, and
accountants.
there's a level of somewhat dissatisfied with the work, or is it the repetition?
It
What
could
was
be
it
the
for you, do you
repetition.
think? You're listening to Pivot Point Strategy for Change. If today's conversation resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. It truly helps others find the show and supports the work we're doing here. You can find Pivot Point Strategy for Change on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like a deeper dive into the work we explore on the show, I invite you to visit my Substack page where I share in-depth articles and reflections.
Because
Right.
my personality does not like repetition. I didn't like mucking out the stalls every day. I didn't like weeding in the garden. I would rather do something I was really good at that was not repetitious. And, once I became a realtor, I have 5x my income. And so why don't I just do what I'm good at? Because not everyone's 87% of realtors fail. They don't make
Yeah.
it. And so this is maybe what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm also a writer and I like to speak and inspire people and meet people. So I think, the accountants that become disgruntled and the lawyers and the doctors, they probably went into it for the esteem,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really fit them, perhaps, what they really want to do. And you'll see them, 20 years in, maybe switch their career or pick up a hobby or retire early to do what they really wanted to do.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what I'm seeing very much in this area anyway.
Mhm.
What did you have to grieve in order to move forward?
Oh gosh, I mean, the loss of my first marriage, the loss of the family unit, losing friends. I want to say disappointing people, but in the end I really didn't because they're like, "Oh wow, you weren't crazy after all. You're really thriving." And and now, family members and such they're like, "Wow, you're an author. You're a published author and you like people are loving what you're doing and who thought all these years that you had this in you?" And but the biggest thing to grieve, I think, was part of my former life was really beautiful. Great community, lovely area that I lived in, financial gains, beautiful home. You know, the it family, dare I say? With the beautiful daughter and the successful athlete and the family unit. So I think grieving the loss of the family unit, people may relate to that because it looked really good.
So, how did this pivot challenge your identity, especially reinventing your career in your 50s?
Wow. Oh,
Because
so
that's a
like
big challenge.
it is a big challenge.
But
Can I?
your story is so inspiring. That's why I just want to
Yeah,
go
I
right
mean,
there.
it's so funny. When you say that, I was like, I really did that at 50. Yeah, I did. I
Right,
was like,
because
yeah,
you just made a new connection to the awareness, and it's now
yeah.
another aha moment, which is wonderful to see. Honestly, I have to
Yeah,
say.
I'm like, "What? I guess I was 50. I sure was. Here I am 60 now." And I'm like, I'm gonna go speak, right? So who says I can't? I'm gonna continue to go down the path of the full vision that I have for myself. And I think that I'll help people. And that's my mission in life. So anyway, it all led to this. But yeah, I think at 50, you think, oh gosh, my life's coming towards the end and you grieve the empty nester thing and like what am I going to do and I see my mom who's 89 thriving, still sharp as a tack, driving, playing bridge, doing, walking, doing a little yoga here and there, and she might be smarter than I am still. So just very impressive, and I'm like, okay, I have another 30 years here. that I can do some good on the planet. What am I going to do? And it won't be what everybody else tells me to do.
I love the outlook, honestly.
Yeah. You have to really, you could think, oh my gosh, 2/3 of my life is over
Yeah,
ish,
no, but
but you can't.
you can, and you didn't let what we call introjects, these shoulds,
Yes.
stop you. I
Yes.
shouldn't do this.
What
I'm
does she think
turning.
she's doing?
What
I
does
had
she think?
somebody
Yes,
say to
exactly.
me,
That's
"What
exactly it.
what are you doing with your little book?" And I was like, "Oh,
Oh my
okay."
God. That term little, right?
Yeah.
It's really a loaded word, right? How is your little real estate practice going? Not only,
I
when they,
know. Did you see me in the magazine recently? You just gotta
yeah,
put your head down and keep going,
right.
people.
Well, I think there's a pessimism for many people, and there's a
Yeah.
misery kind of thing, and keeping people back, or a disbelief. So
Yeah.
it's very hard. But I've seen many. We're basically the same age, so I've seen so many in Generation X people like ourselves just say, forget this. I'm moving on. There's and the work I do, I really, it's inspiring to meet someone like you, and who's really taken it to the next level. So when when we connected, I was really looking forward to the conversation that we would have about just going forward and not allowing the past experiences to define you or limit you, which I just want to compliment the amount of effort that you've made, and
Thank
really
you.
turned it around. It's spectacular.
Hey, it's
I'm
it's not that I didn't have doubts along the way, everybody
Of
needs to
course,
know.
but that needs to be heard. I mean, I
Yeah.
appreciate you're hearing that, you're saying that, because people need to hear that, because the voice inside saying, "What do you know? How can you do this?"
Now what do
And
you
all
think you're
those,
doing?
yeah, what do you think you're doing? And it's
Yeah.
all our previous experiences, or parents or grandparents or people in our family, or other bosses that have spoken to us and really tore us down, because
Yes.
there's a level of pessimism that exists out there.
And they didn't do it. And maybe they have
Exactly.
some
Yeah,
hidden
they do.
opportunities
Agenda to yes,
that
yeah,
they haven't fulfilled,
yeah.
and it threatens them. There's an analogy to a bucket of crabs. Have you ever heard this?
No,
That
tell it.
if there's a bucket of crabs, and I equate this to the mates section of my book, the last of the M's, who's around you? Do they support you or do they sabotage you? And so a bucket of crabs is, if one of the crabs sees an opportunity to rise above and get out of the bucket and do something different, the other crabs will grab their legs and pull them
Yes,
back
they pull
down.
him down. I was
They
I
don't.
was waiting for that. Yes.
Everybody's staying. Don't surround yourself.
Yeah.
Don't put yourself in a bucket of crabs.
Yeah. I love those analogies. Now, I you integrate concepts like the wheel of life and Maslow's hierarchy. How do those show up in practical decisions people make about their homes?
Well, yeah. All the time. People just don't realize it. And now that I've talked about this for 7 years with people, when they say I'm struggling with this, I don't care for my dining room. Well, why don't you care for your dining room? I don't like the color. Okay,
Right.
well, that's an aesthetic need. On Maslow's hierarchy. That's right under self-actualization. Easy fix. Change the color. It's great. But really, what they didn't like about the dining room is their family wouldn't fit because they were having grandchildren. And so I don't like it. And as well, okay, well, let's talk about this. Well, now that we have grandchildren, we need room for 12. There's only 8 people can sit in that dining room. I was like, okay, that is a love and belonging in the family, and love and belonging need, and maybe an esteem need, maybe a safety need if the kids tables around the corner, you know, you got to keep an eye on the little ones. And so you want to all be together, and it's a physiological need because you can't physically fit in the space. So what I suggested, she had this huge living room on the right hand side of her house. Dining room was over here near the kitchen, but the living room ran the whole house, so still towards the back as well. I said, swap. Take your dining room table, or get a bigger one, but get a bigger dining room table. Put it right in front of the fireplace. Hang a chandelier. You now have room for 20 people if you need to. You can have the big table and the little table for the children. And she's like, that's brilliant. So I just moved my living room. I said, yeah. And I know your husband needs an office now that he's semi-retired. He's at home. Put some doors on the dining room. Make it a living room office because you don't really use it anyway.
Has that become that's amazing the way you describe it, and you've changed someone's perception of what they could do, and then you've inspired them, and then they go out in there and do it. It's almost I just it's just so striking how simple that could be, but you have to have the eye for it, and you certainly do. And
Yeah.
that's
And I didn't have 20 years of doing it that way. So I came in with fresh eyes, just like, I know you've done it this way and you have memories of that being your dining room, but
Yeah,
it's not suiting you anymore. And I know you don't want to move. You love your neighborhood. Just do it like not even a renovation. Switch the functions of the room
that's great.
and you're good.
So, how can someone recognize when their home is no longer supporting who they're becoming?
Well, it's the feelings. It's the sadness. When someone's driving up to their home and they're frustrated or like, oh, I'm lonely, like my kids are gone or my neighbors have all left, they've gone to the beach. And it's the feelings, if they become overwhelming and sometimes you don't recognize, like, why am I so frustrated? It's because you have 5 kids and 3 bedrooms and the laundry doesn't fit in the laundry room anymore. And, the dogs, 2 dogs and 5 kids, your house is too small for you. And so then we have to look at financially, what can you do? What are your
Yeah,
options for school and everything? So it is the feelings, and then after you identify the feelings, you have to decide, do I stay, go, or reno?
that was going to be my next question. So, for
Yeah.
someone at a pivot point, how do they know whether to stay, renovate, or leave?
Well, it's okay. Here's your options. I'm a big options person. So first, you have to clarify through the wheelhouse assessment what is going wrong. What's like, what are your pain points in the home? What are you scoring each section? And then with the questions that prompt you, write down, oh, yeah, that's a problem. Oh, no, we love that about the house. No, this is okay. It would be better if this were the case. And so you clarify with the structure of the assessment, and then once you see it on paper, you cannot unsee that. And so you have to, okay, we're going to add a granny pod, an additional dwelling unit on the back because mom needs to come live with us. Or so we don't have to move. We just need to add that renovation, and financially she'll help, or she can't help. We need to do it. We have the means. So you go through each area, like what would make the best sense. But if it comes up that like, yeah, we don't have any room to expand, and the house is too small, and we have the financial means, and there's other neighborhoods in our school district, and so you just go through and if everything's structurally great with your house and the location, you might be staying, making a small functional move or redecorating, whatever. You might be renovating, is the next thing, because whenever you renovate, you do add value onto your house usually. But then if it's just not going to work out, you're moving. If your tire is punctured and you're in a zero, there's either one section that's a zero, like we're living in a 2-bedroom condo, new-ish married people. They have one child. There's another one on the way, and they decide they want a puppy. Well, that 2-bedroom condo in a high rise is not going to work for many reasons, and so they're probably moving.
So, do you think many people stay and spend years in living environments or their identity that no longer fit who they're becoming? Do you think that happens?
For sure.
Yeah.
I see it all the time, and they either recognize it and they want to make the move. There's three outcomes there. They recognize it and they know where they want to go and what they want to do. They've been dreaming. I know someone, my daughter is 5 more years in high school, and then we're going to the beach, you know? And, or it's, yeah, I know this isn't the house for me. My kids don't want us to move. And they're all up in arms because they love the house and everything. And I said, because you haven't figured out where you want to go yet. So if you had something fun, like we're going to move here and get a pool and you guys bring the kids and
Yeah.
whatever, that's great. Or they're just like, I don't know why I feel so frustrated. I'm just kind of sad, or something's missing. And like, is this it? Like my kids are gone. What's next? I have no idea.
It's the fear, right? It's really
It's the fear. It's a
the
void,
unknown. Yeah.
the unknown,
Yeah.
the like, who am I anyway? Because I lost my identity or along the way is very common.
One of the things we often talk about here on Pivot Point is the quiet moment before the change, when someone senses something is wrong but hasn't acted on it yet. So, what do you think prevents people from making that shift?
To
Is
the
it more than
quiet
just
moment
yeah,
or from the quiet moment?
from the quiet moment of
Got it.
realization, and then the fear kicks in? I mean,
It's the finality of it, isn't it?
yeah,
I've made a decision. Well, I was often known for this, being quietly deciding something and researching it for 2 years and then making the decision and then telling everybody.
well,
I would hint along the way like, "Yeah, I'm thinking of this, and I was
right.
researching that." And but I really didn't want anyone to talk me out of what I wanted,
Until
and
you were certain, right?
I was pretty certain and
Yeah.
still investigating.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is, A, people don't investigate it enough
Yes.
and figure out what are my options and what would it cost to go back to school, and or like what other living arrangements are there, and what have other people done. So people don't investigate, they just stay stuck in their little, afraid in their little bubble. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of those things. It's they don't investigate, and then the fear of telling people is like, I'm going to crush some souls. I'm going to crush people when I tell them I'm making this change. And that happens sometimes.
Yeah. I I want to bring up when someone has spent years taking care of everyone else,
Mm,
how do they begin reconnecting with themselves again? And I'm going to speak a little bit more to help to just give you a moment. I recently did a couple of interviews on caretakers, you know, Gen Xers taking care of their parents
mm,
and for years.
mm,
And when they pass, they've got now to only themselves and they've got to take care of themselves.
mhm.
They were taking care of kids at first, let's say. So that's a tough place to be. Um, I'm curious what your viewpoint is.
Well, I mean, such a noble thing to take care of your parents and also obviously to take care of your kids. And many people are doing both. You know, the sandwich generation is here. And you do lose yourself because I watched a man at breakfast the other day. I think it was his wife, I'm pretty sure, who was in a walker and not very old, but she had something going on. And I watched her. It was raining and he went and got the car and he came and picked her up and she waited under, which I was waiting also for my husband to pick me up with such a nice southern gentleman here. And I watched him come get the walker and put it in the car, and she got in the car and then he went around the back in the rain with the walker, and I was like, what a selfless person. I mean, that is so admirable. But then I started thinking, what toll has this taken on him? You know, because all he was thinking about was her, and that's so lovely. I don't think that's bad at all, but I just wonder, and because, you know, she looked fairly young. She could live another 20 years and maybe. I don't know these folks. I'm one of those people that observe.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
observe people all the time, and I can't help it. And, I just sort of intuited like, "Okay, I think he's happy. I hope he's happy. She seems like a lovely lady, but boy, he's doing a lot." And in 20 years, what is he gonna do when if he loses her? And I think that happens a lot to people, and so I hope along the way he has some resources that he can still go to his woodworking shop, or I'm making things up,
yeah, yeah,
or, read a book at night, or someone stays him so that he retains some of his personality and some of the joy in his life besides his wife, you know, who I'm sure he loves. But I think people get lost, and the way you come back is, what did I like to do when I was younger?
mm,
What did I gravitate towards before everyone else told me what to do? Like when I was a young teen, I golfed. I was at the golf course every day, which girls didn't do back in the day. And I caught crawdads in the stream on the golf course, and you know, loved swung from trees and I skated on the pond. I like being outside. So I garden, I do, you know, I like to be grounded. I do yoga, I golf, and I used to love to write. I remember my 3rd grade teacher reading a story I had written, and she didn't I was quiet. She didn't tell people who wrote it. And I remember everyone turned around when they figured out it was me. And I was
so
like, they liked it. So like
that stayed with you,
that
obviously.
stayed with
Yeah,
me. Yeah. And
and it
so
left
what did you
a
like
real
to do?
yeah. What has inspired you the most about the people you've met through your work? I'm curious.
Other stories.
Tell us.
Inspiring when I see a breakthrough about this is who I am and I've been living out of alignment and I don't want to do it anymore. And this is a barrier to me being happy, or my life has changed. You know, it's just when I see people's potential. I do. I'm like, gosh, you know, they're so smart. I can tell they're smart. How are they stuck in this situation?
But you're intuitive,
I'm very
extremely. Yeah,
intuitive to a
but
fault
but you're very likable.
most of the
You're
time.
well, well, when you like someone or something,
Yes.
but you're also you're expressive.
Yes.
You're very
Yes.
articulate. So, but there's a warmth that comes through from
Mm,
you. I just want to compliment you on that because it is certainly authentic when you certainly you wouldn't say it if you didn't mean it. Is what
that's right.
you know,
And
you'd be
sometimes
selective whatever you would say if
very,
right.
oh my gosh,
In
sometimes
a
I've been in a situation where I can tell there's a power dynamic within a
right,
couple, which is probably
right,
my biggest pet peeve.
right. But you can
When
you pick up on it
I
though.
pick up on it and I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
it. And I try to be an advocate for the quieter person so they have a say in the decision without making the other person mad.
You're listening to Pivot Point Strategy for Change. If today's conversation resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. It truly helps others find the show and supports the work we're doing here. See, you essentially, as you know, if you haven't recognized it already, you're you're implementing, psychological therapeutic methods
Probably.
instinctively, which is great. And you don't have to know the terminology, but you have to understand the people, and that's what was so gripping for me to find in the work that you're doing. Given the work that you do, helping people align their lives with the spaces they live in, what what do you think happens psychologically and emotionally when someone realizes their environment no longer supports their needs or growth? And I'm thinking about people working from home in small apartments or condos, couples sharing limited space, families trying to balance work, parenting, and daily life all in the same rooms, not because they're doing something wrong, but because economic realities like high housing costs, interest rates, and rising living expenses make change difficult. So, what impact does that kind of environmental stress have on a person's emotional well-being and their relationships, their productivity and sense of identity? And what would you say to someone who feels their space is beginning to emotionally and psychologically constrain them, but they feel stuck? I know
Yeah, a lot of people feel stuck. A lot of people feel low interest rates several years ago. They're stuck. They're feeling stuck in their home because they can't afford to move. The cost of housing went up 30% of like just to buy the home, et cetera, et cetera. The dollar, the gas, the expenses are rising. This is depressing. So let's move
no,
on from
but
it's
no,
the
I hear
truth
you.
though.
It's the truth. No, it's the
It's the
reality,
truth.
and these are the constraints that we're all
Yeah.
are
But
confronted with.
but on top of that, also during COVID, we all realized what a respite home should be.
Yes.
And I think that it realigned our priorities to make home less chaotic because outside is chaotic, the world is chaotic, and we need to create a place of rest and refueling, and you can't do that in chaos. And so, how can, even if you can't move, you can control your living environment. And so, does your son have a place to study? Does grandma have a place she's not going to fall down the stairs and then we have to take her to the hospital? Does the introvert in the family, let's say it's the husband and the wife is an extrovert and the wife loves to entertain, that's her thing. Is the husband allowed to kind of get out of the group and like let him go cook the steaks on the grill? Give him the peace that he desires. If he's not a true, and he doesn't want to begrudge you of your extroverted entertaining. However, he needs a break. And so say, hey, honey, can you go check on the steak? You cook the steaks. We'll be in here. He'll come in and out. Just recognize the personalities of the people in the home and realize they're not trying to make you angry most of the time. They're just trying to live the way that makes them comfortable. And it may clash with the way you like to live, but if you can allow everyone to be themselves in the home, it eliminates chaos and it becomes a place of respite, not another place they need to perform.
So well said. Just one thing I find so fascinating is that your pivot wasn't necessarily caused by catastrophe, it was caused by honesty. Do you think people often wait for collapse before giving themselves permission to change?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Financial collapse, especially,
Yeah.
collapse of a marriage, addiction. There's a whole couple of chapters in my book about barriers to self, and the home is a representation of self if you do it right. However, if you have an addiction problem, a trauma, a codependency, an illness, a physical illness, it prevents you from being yourself. And I think you know, that's a huge barrier to living a life in alignment. You're not yourself. You need someone like you to help you walk through that type of barrier before you can up level enough to change your environment, I think.
Said. So your work now centers around alignment and authenticity. How do you personally define alignment today compared to how you defined success years ago?
I think years ago I was outward facing. It was, am I doing a good
Mm,
job? Am I making people happy? Is everyone okay in my house? How can I fix things? Now I am more introspective, and in the journey of the past at least 10 to 15 years really was who am I and how can I live in more alignment, because then I have more energy to give to people around me as opposed to being drained. And kind of absent, really, a little absent with my true personality, and I think people can feel that when you're not there.
there's a line in your story that stands out to me. I wanted to mention it. What felt painful and confusing was actually an invitation. At what point did the disruption stop feeling like loss and start feeling like transformation?
Hmm, That's a very good question, because every once in a while you still feel a little bit of loss. That's just life. But it's replaced with, but now I have this. And so I think it
You reframe.
about was sorry?
You reframe.
Yeah, I'm a very excellent reframer.
No, that's I'm bringing that up, and I want to bring
Yeah.
that to the forefront because for some in the work I do, it's incredibly difficult for them to connect with and grasp that concept because there's so much emotion and overthinking that disrupts it and it clouds it, and there's there's a there's a lack of innate, let's say, hardware to be able to detach
Mhm.
rationally and
Yeah.
start to recognize internally and then figure, because I know what you're saying when you say I'm a I, you put a positive spin and you assess and then I know that's what I want to say. So
Yeah. Well, I have a really good example. People might
please,
think
yeah,
I'm crazy, actually, but it really worked. That house that got torn down, Clarity Farm,
right.
2016. I knew it was going to be torn down. I went out there and I visited it with my kids. We said goodbye to the house like it was a person. And we had great times there, even though it didn't fit us. And you can read the book to find out why. So I went out there and I said, well, gosh, this was so beautiful, but I can do this for other people. Why don't I just become a realtor and help other people and then eventually myself recreate the perfect scenarios for their ways to live? So the house got torn down, and about a year later, come to find out, the new owners, it was going to be a Clarity Farm showcase, raising money for children in wheelchairs. Now, I moved because I should be in a wheelchair, but what I don't often say is my daughter should be in a wheelchair from a neurological defect, and that's the final reason we moved from Clarity Farm, because she couldn't ride horses anymore. She was becoming paralyzed in a leg, and so, wow, I mean, I just got chills telling this story. And I said, wow, they're rebuilding it and it's going to a charity that's like for children. Because I always said, who's going to play with my daughter if she's in a wheelchair? They were creating a playground for children. And I just got chills. It went in wheelchairs. And I said, well, I'm about to become a realtor. I'm going to sponsor it. And I didn't tell anyone who I was. And I sponsored the showcase home. We raised $120,000 for the playground, and
That's
they
incredible.
didn't have anyone to give the tours of the home. I told one gal in the bus ride there, I developed this property like years ago. And I just, I'm sponsoring it. I know it's weird.
I don't
And
think
they
so.
don't
That's
tell the
great.
owners who I am. It'll be awkward that they tore down my house. And so I went, and then I was like, okay, what can I help with? I'll guide, whatever. And there's my big sign between the garage and the house. It's huge. And they were like, we need someone to give tours. And I was like, no one was volunteering. And I was like, I'll do it. I'm giving tours for children in wheelchairs in the house I recovered from a broken back. Not sorry, in the ground. So the front
Yes.
they tore down the house.
Yeah.
The space I wrote the essay to Oprah, like, when I walked in the door, I was like, "It was right about there." So talk about reframing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, that's you tapped into your emotional creativity,
Yeah. Like,
and
and
you
I
and
I
you went
had
with your
someone
gut.
close to me at the time
Yeah.
say, "I couldn't have done that." And I was like, "It's actually what saved me." I just, it just absolutely I let it go. I moved on. I blessed the house. I blessed the people. Instead of
Yeah.
harboring this, like, how dare they
Right.
tear down a beautiful house? I was like, "Thank you for doing that."
Wonderful. What has surprised you most about the person you became after the pivot you experienced?
The joy. Yeah, like, it's not all the time, but, like, the potential for joy because I'm in alignment. I'm not struggling against the left side of my brain to do everyday things. I do it for, like, 2 hours, and I'm good at it because I developed that side of my brain, but I try to eliminate barriers to just being me, and if it's people, I'm not gonna make a fuss, but I'm just gonna kinda put push them out a little bit because they're not supporting who I really am,
Yeah.
and I don't need to, so now I get to experience joy writing or gardening or doing yoga. And some people that I hang out with, they're like, "Oh, that's so woo woo," you know, but I'm like, "That's cool. I don't want to talk about shoes. I'm good."
See, that's you're touching upon something that you've connected with when you were younger and
Yes.
reconnected now as an adult, but it's an adult thing. It's not your,
Right.
and so, Kim, what one of the things that really stands out to me about your work is that it goes far beyond homes,
Mm,
design, or even physical space. What you're really doing is helping people examine whether their environments they're living in are truly supporting their lives that they're trying to build. And I think that is incredibly meaningful and transformative work. And there's something deeply therapeutic about your approach because you're not simply talking about aesthetics or organization, you're helping people understand the emotional and psychological impact that environment has on identity, relationships, stress, growth, and overall well being. And at the same time, there's also a leadership quality to what you do because you empower people to make intentional decisions instead of remaining stuck in patterns that no longer serve them. And what I find especially remarkable is that your work sits at the intersection of emotional insight, personal development, practical strategy, and human connection. You help people recognize that change is not only internal, sometimes transformational, and it requires creating what I find to be an external environment that finally aligns with who they are becoming. And I think the impact of the work that you're doing is profound because many people silently normalize stress, emotional exhaustion, or feeling constrained by their surroundings without realizing how much the environment may be affecting their mental clarity, their relationships, their energy, and sense of possibility. So I just want to say your work, it's wonderful to see. It really gives people permission to reflect on all of that in a very compassionate but empowering way. And honestly, I think what makes your work so powerful is that it's hopeful. You talk about
yes.
being a more optimistic or positive person. You assess, you understand, you take it in, and then you help people see that they're not necessarily trapped,
Mhm.
that intentional change is possible and that creating a more aligned life often begins with becoming honest about what is and is not supporting their growth anymore. And that's incredibly impactful work that I admire. And I just had to say that. I know
Thank
I
you.
went on and on, but
Thank you, Nick.
I'm so struck by what you're doing and the way you're bringing the two worlds together. It's amazing. It just
That means the world to me. I'm just happy it's making sense because it had to come out of my head.
no, it makes a lot of sense. It
Good.
makes a lot of
Good.
sense. Is there anything that you can tell someone who's sitting at the threshold of this disturbance inside their mind inside their body and their emotion, feeling misaligned, feeling disconnected, but listening to your story and gathering some encouraging words and really inspiring words. What else would you tell someone who's fearful, really, when they realize it?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is you don't have to tear burn everything down and destroy everything. If you could pick one or two things, or just one thing, it could be simple, about like getting rid of things in your junk drawer that drain you. You don't have to burn down the barn. You can, just make little changes and just really push the pause button to figure out what your vision looks like. It doesn't have to be tomorrow you make a change. It took me 15 years to start making changes. But you can do things that make you happy. Like if you're an introvert in an extroverted job, when you get home at night, don't plan a dinner party on a Friday night. You might need that Friday night to read a book or watch a movie or grab your best friend, your partner, and have a quiet, meaningful, movie or something just to regulate your system. So it's twofold: knowing who you are and what makes you happy and doing small things until you can make bigger changes. Do not overwhelm yourself.
I like the way you just broke it down and simplified it so it could be easily embraced and understood. Kim, thank you so much for speaking on Pivot Point Strategy for Change. I look forward to talking to you again if the opportunity arises for us to do anything further along the lines of the work that you're doing and perhaps combine or collaborate together. I'm looking forward to doing that.
That would be fantastic.
What makes this conversation with Kim Costa so powerful is that it challenges something many people don't question enough. Just because a life looks right doesn't mean it's right. Some of the most significant pivot points don't come from collapse or failure. They come from a moment of honesty. When you finally admit that something no longer fits. And that's not a breakdown, it's awareness. Kim's story reminds us that alignment often requires letting go of what once made sense in order to make sense for what is true now. It also reframes reinvention, not as something reserved for a certain age or stage, but as something available the moment you're willing to stop performing and start listening. Because the real strategy for change isn't becoming someone new. It's becoming more honest about who you are and having the courage to build a life that reflects that truth. Thank you for listening to Pivot Point Strategy for Change. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might be standing at their own pivot point. And until next time, pay attention to what no longer feels aligned. It may be pointing you exactly where you need to go. I leave you with the one question I like to leave at the end of every episode. Think about it. What's your pivot point? What's your pivot